In this video, we're going to learn about SwiftData in the context of building a visionOS app. We're going to build a workout list visionOS app. So this would be a list of all the workouts you want to do, and you could add new workouts. For example, let's say jogging. Then you could delete an item, and then you could also check if you finish that workout. Click the check mark, and all this data would be persisted across sessions because we're storing this using SwiftData in a local database. So for example, if I close this app and then I open it again, you can see the data and the state all persisted. So by building this app, we'll learn about all the CRUD operations in SwiftData, to how to create an item, read an item, update an item, and delete an item. So before we go into SwiftData, if you don't know already, CoreData was the previous database solution, and it's one of the most popular database frameworks that's natively supported by Apple. That was released in 2005 and is still being used today. And SwiftData is essentially built on top of CoreData, and it's a very recent framework released in 2023. It's very new, which means it's likely to be a bit buggy, but it will keep improving over time. And you may ask at this point, why not just use CoreData? It's more mature and it's more developed, right? So what's different about SwiftData? So what makes SwiftData different is that one, it's built with SwiftUI in mind. So if you ever tried using CoreData with SwiftUI, you will notice that it's a bit cumbersome. There's a lot of extra things you need to do. But SwiftData, as you will see soon, it's built with SwiftUI in mind, which makes it very, very easy to integrate with SwiftUI. And you'll see that soon. So now, like I said, this is a database solution, right? So it means it lets you create items in your database, read items from your database, update items, and delete items. So create, read, update, delete, or in short, named CRUD, is typically what you do with the database, right? And how exactly do you do these CRUD operations? So for that, let me introduce you to the high-level architecture of SwiftData and how it will be used from our apps. So first you got this app, right? The application. So your application would be the one making the CRUD calls to create, read, update, or delete items for the database. In this case, the SwiftData. And the SwiftData database, the actual persistent storage, is encapsulated by this container guy. So the container guy, what you see on the right, is actually the storage guy that stores all your data in the disk. But the thing is, the application does not directly communicate to the container, which is the persistent storage. Instead, we have this guy in the middle called the context. And the context is what the application communicates to. And the context is stored in memory, which means you can access it faster and read from it faster and delete from it faster. So the operations are much faster. And the container is stored in disk. So the reason why they put a context in here is most likely to make things a lot faster. It essentially provides you this temporary staging area. So the context is what your application will interact with. So anytime you want to make a CRUD call, like save, create, read, update, or delete, you would do that to the context. And the context then commits it to the container once it's ready to do so. So that's how SwiftData operations would work. From your perspective, all you got to worry about is the fact that your application makes the CRUD calls to the context. The context then later commits it to the container. So if that confused you, don't worry, it will all become clear as we write some code now. So first I'm going to create a new project. Make sure you choose visionOS. Click next, give it a product name. I'm going to name it visionOS SwiftData, and then make sure the initial scene is window and immersive space is set to none, and then click next. Store it wherever you want. Awesome. So first step, I'm going to remove what's in the body by default, and I'm going to add a V-stack, a vertical stack, and inside that stack, I'm going to add a text with the title named Workout App. Awesome. So let's make that a bit bigger. So I'm going to give the title a font of extra large title. Great. So for the UI, below the workout app, I'm going to add a dummy list view for now. And inside this list view, I will have, for now, a dummy set of text. So this would be workout 1. And let's copy paste that 4 more times. Great. So I'm going to name it workout 2, workout 3, and workout 4. So this is just a dummy set of workouts that I've just added in for now. Later, we'll replace it with the workouts from the database. Great, so there's the title, the list of workouts, and below that I want to add button to add a new workout. So I'm going to create a button with name add, and then the onClick function goes here. So when a user presses something, we could add the action here. If I zoom in, you can see the add button right here. Great. So we got all the elements. So let's style this up a bit. So first up, I want to add some spacing around the whole VStack. So I'm going to collapse the VStack, Command Option left arrow, and then add some padding around it. So one padding, and I'm going to add one more padding. So I added a bit of padding around the VStack, which contains all our views. And you can see that looks a lot better already with the padding. Awesome, so that looks like a good starting point. So now what I want to do is when the user presses the add button, I want to show a modal view where the user could enter a new workout, and from there, the user could also save it in the database. Let's see how. So below the VStack, present a sheet. So this is the modifier that you use to present a modal view in SwiftUI. So here I'm going to use this option. So the isPresented guy would control whether the sheet is shown or not, and the content would be the content you want to present. So to control whether the sheet is shown or not, I'm going to add a new state variable. And I'm going to name it is add new workout view showing. And initially it will be set to false because we don't want that to be showing. And then I'm going to bind that state variable to this isPresented guy here. So to bind it, again, $, and you type in the state variable. Great. So I've bound this state to this isPresented guy, which controls whether the sheet is showing or not. Now here, I want to define modal view that I want to show, right? For now, let's just create an empty view just to see if the sheet bed is working. So now it won't work because initially this guy, which controls whether the sheet is shown or not, is initially false, right? And nowhere are we setting it to true. Only when we set to true would this guy be shown, whatever view we have here. So where do we do that? Obviously, when we click the add button, right? That's when we want to show the sheet. So right here in the add button, when the user clicks that, I'm going to set is add new workout showing to true. So let's try that out in the previews. I'm going to click add, and now you can see an empty view is showing here. Great, so the modal presentation is working. So now let's replace this empty view with an actual view for the user to add something in. Great, so let's do that next. So I'm going to create a new SwiftUI file here to create that view. And I'm going to choose SwiftUI view, and I'm going to name this add workout view. Great. So let's just bring that over here on top. Now in the previews, the gloss background effects is not being seen. The window is not visible clearly. For that, you could either add the gloss background modifier directly to this guy here inside preview, or you could just use Windows tile and set it to automatic. And this should solve that problem. Great. So now you see the preview correctly. The window is showing with the text hello world. Awesome. So now here, let's design the modal view for the user to input a new workout in. So here, what I want essentially is first a title. And then below that, I want to show a text field for the user to input a new workout item in. And then below that, a button, which when the user clicks would save the workout and then dismiss this view. So first for the title, I'm going to create a new text, name this add new workout. Great, so we see that text here now in the preview. Let's make the font extra large. Actually, let's just make it a bit smaller. It's too big for a modal, so I'm going to use large title instead. Great, that looks okay. Great, so next I'm going to add a text field. So for that, there's the text field view in SwiftUI. And then I'm going to use this option, the simplest one. Here we simply provide empty string here, and then this guy here would be the text that contains whatever the user is typing in. So to store that, I'm going to create a new state variable. So state var input text, and this would be an empty string by default. And then I'm going to bind that guy here to this text guy in text field. So $input text. Now if I click refresh on the preview, great. So right now the text field is not very visible, but if you hover over here, you can see it's right below the add new workout. To now make it more visible and look better, I'm going to change the text field style by using this modifier dot text field. And here I'm going to change the style to rounded border. Let's see what we get now. That looks a bit better. And now I'm going to do one thing which I forgot to do, is wrap all of these guys inside a VStack, because you want all these to be displayed vertically stacked next to each other, right? So I'm going to copy all that, create a VStack, and then paste that in here. Great, so now we got the title, the text field in the VStack, and the text field, whatever the user is typing in here, the text would be bound to this input text state variable. So that way we have access to the input text by the user and the state variable. And below the text field, we're going to add a button. And this would be a button with a system SF symbol, system name. So the system name would be checkmark. This is one of Apple's predefined SF symbols, which we could use. And then the action would be the on-click action. And finally, I'm going to change the button to a rounded shape, right? So for that, I'm going to do label style and then use icon only, which defaults the button to a circular shape. Great, so now we got a circular button very easily. Awesome. Now let's design this view a bit more. So firstly, I'm going to give some padding around the VStack. So here, if I collapse the VStack and give some padding around it, it will give some padding around the entire content. So let's just see what this would look like. So I'm going to make the window smaller. I'm going to give it more padding actually. So give one more padding. Great, that looks better. Now, obviously I want to add some spacing between these three items. So here, inside the VStack, which contains all these three items, I'm going to add a spacing. So spacing of 20, let's say. Great, that looks slightly better. So all this does is it defines the spacing between the elements in the VStack, which is at the moment the title, the text field, and the button. Now, before we design this further, let's go back to our content view and let's see how it looks so far. So in the content view, what we want to do is when we press the add button, we want to show that modal, right? That we just designed. But right now, we just showed an empty view for the modal. Remember, this is the guy that shows the modal view. So let's replace that empty view with the view that we just designed, which is the add workout view. Now let's see what we get when we press add. Great, actually that modal looks good already. We don't need to design it further, right? If I press the text field, the system keyboard appears and you could type that. And if I press save, we want to dismiss the modal and save whatever the user has typed as a new workout in the database. So first, before we do the database bit, let's actually make sure that we dismiss this modal when the user presses check. So here, back in the add workout view, when the user presses the button right over here, I want to first do the create operation in the database, right? So first I want to do CRUD create, and save a new item in database. And then after we've done that, then we would dismiss the modal. So let's just do the dismiss bit first. So the way we do that is we have an action in the environment to do this. So if you type in environment and then type in dismiss, you can see this is an action that dismisses the current presentation. In other words, the current view. So I'm gonna name this var dismiss current view. And then here, I'm gonna call this action on the button press. So this would dismiss the current view. So just like that. Awesome. So now let's go back to our content view. Great. Now here, if I click add, you see the modal appear. When I press check, you'll see the modal disappear now. Great. So that's working. The UI is ready. Great. So now that the UI is ready, let's actually do the first CRUD operation and learn how to use SwiftData for that. So what we want to do is when the user types in a new workout here, for example, blah, 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 what we want to do is take that text and create a new workout item and save it in the database. And we want to save it when the user presses the check button. So let's do that bit now. And here we're going to use SwiftData for that. So first, before we can add anything to the SwiftData database, we need to actually create one database, right? There's no database at the moment in the app. So first, let's learn how to initialize the SwiftData database. So for that, we're going to go to the entry point of the app. Again, this file named after your project name. A better way to recognize is that it would inherit from this app class. So this is the entry point. And here at the entry point, we present a content view, right? The content view is the guy that shows your whole window. Now, what I want to do is at this root level, I want to create a SwiftData database and then inject that at this root level so that all the other views inside this content view would have access to that database. So let's first initialize and inject that here at the root level. Well, to create that database, again, like I said, SwiftData makes it very easy. So all you got to do is first import SwiftData, and then it provides you a modifier called model container. So this sets the model container and the associated model context in this view's environment. So if you remember from the SwiftData architecture diagram, you got the container, and inside the container, you got the context, right? And the context is the bit which the application interacts with. So the context sits in the memory, and the container, the bit where the data is persisted, is stored in disk. So again, think of the container as the one that encapsulates everything. And inside the container, you got a context which the application could interact with. So here, using this model container guy, we could create that meta container, which contains the whole persistence tag for SwiftData. So here, for that, there's two options, right? Here, you could either provide the container that you create yourself, which we'll do in later parts of this course and in this video as well. But here I want to show you first an easier way of initializing SwiftData, which is to use this option. So this is the easiest ways to initialize your SwiftData. So here you could literally define the SwiftData model, your schema type, and it would automatically create a container and make sure those objects are saved in it. I skipped a step ahead, right? We don't have a persistent model here yet. So for that, I'm going to create a new class called this workout item. this would have two items, right? One would be the workout name. So this would be of type string. And then there would also be the status, whether the workout has been done or not. So status. And this would be of type bool. So the two properties, name would be the workout name, and the status, whether we finished with the workout or not. And because this is a class, we need to add a constructor. You can simply use this autofill. So this essentially initializes these two variables. Great. So before I get sidetracked too much, this essentially is the data model that would represent each of our workouts. And this is the bit that we want to persist in our Swift database. In other words, this is essentially the schema for your data model. So the way we make this data model a persistent model, so that it could be used as SwiftData. If you read the description of the model macro, you can see this converts a Swift class into a stored model that's managed by SwiftData. So whatever class we define here, by simply adding the macro, we made sure this is compatible with SwiftData. This essentially is the quick way to define the schema for your data model. Awesome. So now what we can do here, where we're trying to initialize the database, we can simply call the model container here and simply provide the type of your persistent model, right? Again, this class became a persistent model because we added this macro. So what we can do is simply call the class type workout item and do self to give it the type. So this is an array, so wrap that in braces. So this is the fastest way to initialize SwiftData. First, you want to define the data model that you want to store in the database, and then you add the model macro so that this is essentially the SwiftData schema. So that's all you got to do to initialize SwiftData. Awesome. So now I'm going to move this to a separate class to make it a bit cleaner. So I'm going to copy that and create a new file and call it workout item. And then this again is the data model. And I'm going to copy paste that code here. Obviously, it can't find the model macro because that belongs to SwiftData. So import SwiftData, and there you go. So now the error here should be gone as well in the app entry point. All I've done is I took the data model and put it inside a separate file. Awesome. So now we've initialized SwiftData. So next time, what I want to do when the user adds a new workout here, I want to create a workout item, a SwiftData model that we defined here, and then save that into the database. So let's do that bit next. So for that, let's go to the add workout view. So in the add workout view here, what I want to do is when the user presses the check button, this guy here, first, I want to create a new workout item and then save it in the SwiftData container. If you remember from the SwiftData overview, what you notice is that you don't save and read and interact directly with the container, right? Instead, you interact with the context object inside the container. That's where you create and add and save and read and do all the CRUD operations too. So first, create a new workout item. And now for the workout name, it will be the input text here. The text from the text field, right? So that will be input text. And the status by default would be false. The workout has not completed yet. Here, we simply created a workout item out of the text that the user has inputted in the text field here, and we set its status to false. The workout item, again, if you forgot, it's what we defined here, and we added a model macro to it to indicate that this is a SwiftData persistent model. So something that could be stored in the SwiftData stack. And now let's actually store it. Now to store it, again, like I said, we interact directly with the context, right? We don't interact with the container. So we need to access the context somehow, right? We can just grab it from the environment. So we do environment like that, and then do slash dot, and you'll see an option called the model context. This is the SwiftData model context that will be used for queries and other model operation within this environment. Again, exactly what we want. So I'm going to name this model context. And if you're wondering how we could get the model context from the environment like this, again, it's because at the root level of the app, we injected a model container. That's why any child view of this, which is literally all the screens in the app, they could get access to that context object because we inject the model container at the root level. So back to the add workout view. Great. So now we got the model context from the environment, and now we could use this for performing the CRUD operations. So in this case, when the user presses the check button, I want to create a new item in the stack. So what I'm going to do is model context and insert and then pass in the workout item here, which is a persistent model. Great. So this is how you create a new object in the database. So here we created a workout item, which is a persistent model, and then we inserted that to the model context. And this is how you do the create operation. That's all you got to do to create a new item in the database. Awesome. So that's the add bit done. Now, if you go back to the content view, what will happen is every time the user presses add and adds a new workout here and presses the check button, a new new workout model representing that data would be stored in the database. So that's how you create a new workout item and store it in the database. Great. So we got the create bit from the CRUD operations done. Now we need to learn how to read the values that's currently in the database. So what I want to do here in the list view, which displays all the workout items, instead of hard coding it to a text, what I want to do instead is display the actual values from the database. So how do I get access to the workout items that's stored in the database? Again, very, very easy to do. So first, let's import SwiftData here in the content view. And now to read all the workout items in the database, all I got to do is use the query property wrapper. This fetches all instances of the attached model type. And the model type we want to fetch is workout item. So what this would do is this would fetch all the models in the database that are of type workout item. So this variable would then essentially contain the latest set of workout items in the database. Great. So now I'm going to display this in the list view. So I'm going to get rid of this list view. Instead, create a new list view with the data. And this would return every single workout item from this array. Now display a text for each of the workout items. And the text would be workout item dot name, the workout name. Great. So let's try building this in the simulator first and see if it works. Awesome. So here I'm going to click the add button. Going to add a new workout, say deadlifts, 5x reps, and then enter. Great. So that's up here. Awesome. So that's working. So this is essentially being fetched from the database, the data here, right? We're not hard coding it. Let's try adding one more. Let's say squats, 8 reps. Awesome. So again, when we do this bit, we create a new item in the database. For example, let's say bench press, and then we press enter. And as soon as it's saved, because the list view reads from the latest set of models from the database, it updates automatically and reacts to those changes in the database. Now, just to confirm, let's close this app and see if the persistence working. So now I'm going to open the app again. Awesome. So you can see the data persistence. Great. So we can confirm the create and read functionality is working. So it's working in the simulator. Now let's confirm it's working in the previews as well. So just add some random text, click enter, but you don't see it appearing in the list view. Why is that? Well, if you go again, look at the preview macro. So inside here, this is the bit that's showing the preview window. So what you notice here, this is shown in isolation, right? And the content view actually requires the model container to be in the environment. But the model container, we injected it from the entry point of the app. So this in isolation won't have the model container in the environment. So essentially the preview window has no way of knowing where the core data stack is, and hence it can't read from that and display the data. For this view in isolation, which is being presented here for the preview, we need to inject a mock model container for it to work with. So previously in the app entry point, we initialized the SwiftData stack like this, model container, and define the types we want to work with. In this case, just the workout item. But now for the preview, I'm going to show you a different way of doing it. So what we want to do is still have a model container. And here we want to initialize a model container by passing a model container that we create by ourselves here. And you might need to do this when you need a lot of customization in your stack for other use cases. And this is the only way at the moment you could apply with a model container in the preview, as far as I know. Hence why I'm showing you it. And here you can see you can create a model container by again defining the model type you want it to work with, like before. But also you can pass in a configuration object, which contains some model configurations. So here for the types, I'm gonna again, as before, I'm going to say workout item dot cell. So this says the stack expects to store and workout items, i.e. models of these types, just the same as before. Now for the model configuration, I'm going to create a new config, and this would be a model configuration. And here I'm going to use this option. I'm going to set is stored in memory only to true. And the reason why I set it to true is I want this model container to be stored in memory, not in the disk, because this is just for the previews, right? And the preview reads from the memory. It does not really read from the disk. So hence why I need to create a model configuration like this, saying that this container would be stored in memory. And that way, this model container can be used in the previews here. Great. So I'm going to pass that model configuration that I just created to this container. And here I'm still getting an error. Cannot pass array of type workout items. Issue is this is not an array. So you just remove that brackets. Great. So that should work. Awesome. So here I got a config saying the model container should be stored in the memory only. And then I create a container out of that config. So now I can pass that here, container. Now there's one last thing you need to do. So you can see there's an error saying call can throw, but it's not marked with try. So this call, again, if I type in model container again, you can see it throws an error, right? There's this throws here. So we need to handle that because this is a preview and we know there's a configuration here. I'm gonna do try exclamation mark. to force it, and that looks like it's working. Let's try adding a new item again, and let's do something, add random text. Awesome. So now you can see the list is reacting to the database, right? It's adding in the item correctly. Awesome. So that's working. So all we did was for the preview window, we simply provided a new model container that we created by ourselves. And the important bit is we defined that the container would only be stored in memory using this. Awesome. So now we got the preview working as well. Great. So now we got the create functionality working, and we got the read functionality working as well to read data from the database. And the list view reacts to changes in that data. Now, the next step, what's remaining is we need to learn how to update and delete, right? So that will complete all the 4 CRUD operations: create, read, update, and delete. So let's focus on the update bit now. Now, to demonstrate the update bit, for each row, I'm going to have check mark here on the far right, and the user could press that check mark on and off to essentially indicate whether the user has completed that workout or not. So first, let me update the UI for that, and then we'll update the database with the latest value. Great. So here, what I want to do is modify the list row, right? So inside this list, at the moment, we're just displaying a text. So let's change that. So first, I'm going to wrap that text inside an H tag. And now next to the text, I want to place that toggle button. I'm going to use the SwiftUI's toggle view here. So toggle, I'm going to use this option where we can create a system symbol for the toggle view. So leave the title to empty, and the system name would be checkmark. Again, you can go here, plus button, and get access to all the SF symbols here when you press this icon. And if I do checkmark, you can see there's a SF symbol like this, right? Checkmark. So all I'm doing is copying that and pasting that here. And the Boolean, for now, we're just going to add a constant Boolean here. Let's see now what the UI looks like. So I'm going to add a new item. I'm going to name it something random. Great. So now you can see a toggle view appearing here, but the checkmark symbol is here. Something's off. Well, it's just some behind the scenes SwiftUI bug. But for now, all I'm going to do is set the toggle style and ensure that this is a button toggle style, just to make sure everything else is working. Great. Now I'm going to try adding a new workout again, add something. Awesome, this is what I expect. So here for the list row, inside the list, the first item is a text, the workout text, and the next item is a toggle button here. At the moment, I've hard-coded the is on, which controls whether the toggle's enabled or not. I'm going to change that now. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the workout item, the status data, which is a bool, to control this toggle. If you forgot, the workout item has a status property to indicate whether the user has finished or not finished with his workout. So essentially what I've done is I've bound that is finished or not finished workout state to this toggle's is on property. So that way we add the binding directly to the workout model in the database. Now we get an error saying cannot convert value of type bool to expected argument type binding bool. So this is one of the nuances of working with a list view where we need a binding to the SwiftData's query object. So to fix this, let's take the list row and create a sub view out of it. So extract sub view, and I'm going to rename that to list row. Awesome. So now we got the list row here, the sub view that we just extracted out of the main view. And now I'm just going to bring the preview below the list row just to make things a bit clearer. Now inside the list row, it's throwing some errors because it can't find workout item. Obviously, we need to pass the workout item here, right? So here I'm going to create a bindable, not a binding, but a bindable property. And I'm going to name this workout item. And this would be of type workout item. And now for this toggle value, we need to make sure we add a $sign before that because we just made this guy bindable. And now the errors in list row are gone. But if we go back to the main view, there's a missing argument because we just added a binding to that inside that list row, right? So we're going to add that item. And for this workout item, I'm going to bind it to the workout item that we get here, which is coming from the database. So workout item. And now the error should be gone. So if that confused you, all I've done is extracted a sub view for the list row and passed the workout items from the database. So if I go to the list row, these workout items are binded to the objects in the database here, this guy here, the query one that we get from the database. And so in the list row, what I'm doing is simply using that item to display the name and to read whether the toggle is set on or off by the user. Whenever the user presses the check button here, the toggle item, what will happen is the status property inside the workout item, again, remember this is in the database, that would get set to false or true. If it's not clear, the way you update a SwiftData model like this in the database is by simply setting whatever property you want to a new value. And the rest is taken care of behind the scenes. Because workout item is a data model, workout item, if I just type it here, this is a workout item, which is a persistent model because we defined it so. What we can do is simply
say update the status property to a random value. If I set it to true, the change would be automatically updated and reflected inside the database. And same thing, if I set it to false, the change again would be updated and reflected in the database automatically, right? So the update operations, very, very simple. All you got to do is update the value that you want updated in the database. That's it. And here in our use case, we're updating the value using the toggle button, right? So when the user toggled the button on or off, this value, this property gets updated, and the model inside the database would get updated automatically as well. Simple as that. Awesome. So that's the update bit done. Now, before we move on to the delete bit, let's style this view a bit better. So first, I'm going to add some spacing. For the H tag, I add some spacing between the text and the toggle. And now you can see the items are separated and it looks a bit nicer, right? The text here and the toggle here. One more thing, I'm going to make the exercise text a bit larger. So for the text, I'm going to change the font to title. Awesome. So now you can see the text looks good and the spacing looks good as well. So the user can check on and off and the value will stay persisted because we're updating that in the SwiftData database as well. So let's just see if the persistence and all is working by running this on the simulator. Now, when I play this in the simulator, you can see the items from the database are being fetched and displayed correctly. These were the values we had previously. Now, let's say I finished my squats and my deadlifts. Great. So now I'm going to close the app and open it again. So now you can see the update is being persisted as well. The workout done status is being persisted from the previous session. Awesome. So now we know that the update is working as well. Now for the CRUD operations, we got the create, read, and update working. Now the last one remaining is to delete. So what we want is when the user swipes the row left, we want to delete the item from the database. So that's how a user can delete a single workout item. Let's go implement the functionality for that now. Great. So I'm going to go back to the code. Now here, first step we want to do is add the UI logic to detect when a user has swiped left to delete. And then once we've done that, we will delete the model from the database. So the first step, let's add the UI bit. So for the UI bit, you can add an onDelete modifier, which gives you that delete action for free. But to add that, we need to actually put this list row inside a for each loop. So currently the list takes in all the workout items and it spits out each item, and then we display that in each row. Now, instead of doing this, we want to present the list in a different way so that we could use that onDelete modifier. The way we want to do it, we simply present a list. We're going to use a for each to loop through all the workout items. So I'm going to pass in all the workout items here, and it will spit out each workout item as it loops through it. So this would be each of the workout item that this for each loop would give us. Now copy paste the list row and paste it inside the for each loop. So here all we've done is we're presenting a list, and inside a list we've got for each loop which presents each of the items in this array, i.e. each of the workout item in a list row like this. Remember, again, these workout items are coming from here. These are essentially the models in the database. Great. And now we can add the onDelete modifier. What this gives us is essentially the delete UI action for free. Let's see how that works now. So if I add a new item in the preview, let's type in some random text, and let me add one more, just random text again. Great. Now, because we added this onDelete modifier inside the list view, what we get is essentially every time we swipe left on the list row, we get this nice little delete action for free, all because of that onDelete modifier. And when the user swipes all the way left, the row gets deleted. Awesome. We get that delete action by simply adding the onDelete modifier inside the list view. The caveat being, we would need to present these list row inside a for each loop. And one thing to note in the UI bit is also that when we delete the row like this closure would get triggered. So this is onDelete. And here it would give us an index set, which is a set containing all the indexes of the rows here in the list view that we deleted. So for example, again, when I delete it like this, here, the index set would essentially contain just one index, right? So with this, we could essentially get access to the index of the row that the user just deleted. And then using that index, we could get the exact workout item that the user was deleting. So let's see how to do that. So here I'm going to create a new variable called item2delete. And then this would be from the workout items, and the index of the workout items, it would be essentially the row that the user just deleted. because each row is a workout item, right? Great. So we're going to essentially loop through indexes in the index app. In that use case, there will only be one because we're just deleting one row at a time. Copy this guy here and paste it inside here. And here we can get the item to delete by passing in this index to access the item in the workout items array. I'm going to pass in the index here. And then we use that index, i.e. the row that the user has just deleted, to get access to the workout item that was associated with that row. And that would be the item that the user just swiped left to delete. Here we got access to the persistent model that we want to delete from the database. Now, how do we delete it actually from the database? Well, again, it's simple. To delete, we delete this model from the context. So first, from the environment, I'm going to get access to the model context. Again, this is the context that comes with the container that we injected in the root view. And this context would be the guy that will eventually save the operations to the actual database. Great. So now to delete it from the database, all I do is use the model context. And there's a method called delete. And this removes the specified model from the persistent storage during the next save operation. So here we could pass the persistent model, and we just got our persistent model that we want to delete just before in the slide. And I'm going to pass that item to delete right here. Awesome. That's it. It's simple as that. That's how you delete a model from the database, simply using the model context. Great. So all we've done here is when the user swipes left on the row, this guy gets triggered. And then we use the index of the row that was just swiped left to get the workout item that we want to delete. And then we pass that to the model context delete method to actually delete it from the database. Great. Let's just try playing this in the simulator and see if it works. Great. So I'm going to try deleting the squat item, the first row. So swipe left and all the way to delete. And now let me close the app and open it again and see if that persisted. Awesome. So we don't see the squat item anymore because we deleted it. Great. So we can confirm the delete actions working as well. Awesome. So that's all the CRUD operations done. So in this video, we essentially learned how to use SwiftData as a database solution for our visionOS app. We learned the basics of SwiftData, how it's architected. We learned that there's a context which the application interacts with to perform all the CRUD operations like create, read, update, and delete. And then the context automatically behind the scenes saves it to the container, which actually contains the persistent storage. So we learned that's how SwiftData is architected. And then we learned how to initialize the SwiftData stack and then perform all the CRUD operations using the SwiftData stack. Essentially, it involved going to the root view and injecting your model container here. And then within this root view, you use the model context that comes with it to essentially either add items to or delete items from the database. And for updating, you simply update the value of the persistent model. And then for reading, you simply use the query property wrapper to read the items. It's very simple. As you can see, SwiftData is very compatible with SwiftUI. Because of these property wrappers, it makes it very easy and simple to write code to persist data in our database. Awesome. So that's the end of this video.